looking live at the North Carolina Auto Racing Hall of Fame in Mooresville, North Carolina, just off Interstate 77 in the same industrial complex where many of the top NASCAR Winston Cup Series teams are housed, and home of many fine exhibits dating and chronicling auto racing in the fine state of North Carolina. Hi, welcome to This Week in NASCAR. Tonight we are here in the North Carolina Auto Racing Hall of Fame. The racing this weekend just down the road, about 90 miles or so in Rockingham for both the Winston Cup and Busch Series teams. Practice scheduled to get underway first thing tomorrow morning. Tonight we are going to talk with one of the drivers who could play the spoilers role over the final three events of the season. Of course, a lot of the headlines will be dominated by Jeff Gordon and Terry Labonte and Dale Jarrett and the drivers in contention for the Winston Cup Championship over the final 3 weeks of the season. But how about guys who could slide in there and steal a win, and a lot of the headlines from them? Well, one such gentleman will join me shortly. Rusty Wallace, driver of the Miller Ford for Penske Racing South, already a five-time winner in 1996. Rusty Wallace will be here with me shortly. First, though, why don't we get the warm-up lap going, if you will, by taking a spin back through the headlines of racing in the past week. With that, here is Marlo Klain.
Mike Skinner, the defending Craftsman Truck Series champion, is running out of time to repeat last year's championship season. He did close the gap Sunday at the Mesa Marin Speedway in Bakersfield, California. The Ford Dealers 300 was marred by a serious incident on lap 185 when Rick McRae slammed into the back of Toby Butler's stopped truck on the backstretch. That impact caused Butler's Chevy to burst into flames. Both escaped serious injuries. With 6 laps to go in the race, the battle for the lead was among 4 drivers: Ron Hornaday, Jack Sprague, Rich Bickle, and Skinner. When Sprague and Bickle were battling for second, the two touched in turn 2. That brought out the 14th caution flag and set up the shootout between Hornaday and Skinner. With 2 laps remaining, Skinner muscled his way past Hornaday in turn 2. He held on to win his 8th race this season and chopped off 10 points of Hornaday's lead. Now, with 2 races to go in the season, Hornaday's lead is 86. In NASCAR news this week, Jimmy Fenning has left Bobby Allison Motorsports. Fenning and Allison's alliance dates back to the 80s. In the press release, Fenning's only comment was that he was resigning for the health of the company. It will be a group effort for the number 12 Badcock Ford the rest of the season. And with horns on his car, Mark Martin was the first Winston Cup driver to officially take hot laps around the Texas International Raceway Monday. Martin was part of a 2-day Goodyear tire test at TIR. That's in preparation for their inaugural Texas 500, April 6th of next year.
Thank you, Marlo. So a quick look at some of the headlines made over the past 7 days in NASCAR racing. Now, others since that point include the announcement on Wednesday night, last night, that Joe Gibbs Racing would switch from Chevrolets to Pontiacs for 1997. The Grand Prix to be their model of choice. Gibbs's drag racing team runs a Pontiac, and the Winston Cup car will now switch over. This is Bobby Labonte's second trip around with Pontiac. He drove them for Bill Davis Racing back a couple of years ago, 1994, before joining Joe Gibbs. So Pontiac now picking up a couple of new teams, the Joe Gibbs team, plus the new MB Motorsports team that Derek Cope will drive for next season. And finally, we send our condolences to the Pennzoil Racing team, the Bahari Racing team, on the loss of their chassis specialist, Eddie Crotchfeld. Crotchfeld passed away last weekend. He was 45 years old. We also extend our sympathies to his family. Now we move on to take our weekly look at the Napa leaderboard, the NASCAR Winston Cup Championship standings heading into Sunday's race at Rockingham, and that 1-point difference between Jeff Gordon and Terry Labonte going into the race. Gordon has only 1 top 10 finish in 7 tries at Rockingham. That's not too good. Terry Labonte, he led the most laps at Rockingham in the spring, but did not finish after an engine problem. It'll be interesting to see if they can turn that around. The 3rd and 4th place drivers in the standings were the story of the spring race at Rockingham. Dale Jarrett finished 2nd, and Dale Earnhardt won the race. Jarrett comes in 92 points out. Earnhardt is 271 behind. Only 3 more tries for the 5th and 6th place drivers to get a win this season. Mark Martin, he's got 12 straight top 10 finishes, but no wins. And Ricky Rudd's trying to keep that 13-year streak of at least 1 win per season alive. Our guest tonight, Rusty Wallace, is 7th in the standings. He's won 3 of the last 7 races at Rockingham. Sterling Marlin, 40 points behind Rusty. He's in 8th. Rounding out the top 10, Ken Schrader in 9th, one of several drivers who tested at Rockingham last week. And Ernie Irvin, who's had troubles in 3 of the last 4 races. He hopes to turn that around this coming Sunday. The NASCAR Winston Cup Championship to be decided in Atlanta in the Napa 500. You could join this weekend NASCAR for the Winston Cup season finale. It is the grand prize in our Dream Weekend contest from the Atlanta Motor Speedway. And this weekend NASCAR, win a pair of luxury VIP suite passes to Pole Day Friday, the ARCA Series season finale Saturday, and the Napa 500. You see the Winston Cup champ crowned on Sunday, November 10th. How to enter? Here is how. Send your name, address, and phone number to Dream Weekend, care of Promotions Department, Atlanta Motor Speedway, Box 500 in Hampton, Georgia. And we must ask you to make note of the fine print at the bottom of the screen. Coming up later on in the show, we will open the phone lines and take your calls for our guest, Rusty Wallace. It is the Capote Race Line, and it is toll-free from anywhere in the United States, 1-800-266-9531. And with that, we're going to make a quick pit stop, come back and take a look at the 1996 season for our guest, Rusty Wallace, as This Week in NASCAR continues from the North Carolina Auto Racing Hall of Fame.
This Week in NASCAR is brought to you by Royal Oak Charcoal. Good times in every big red bag. Napa Auto Parts. At Napa, we keep America running. Chevrolet. One car company has won more races in the history of NASCAR. Genuine Chevrolet. Hooters Restaurants. We run wings around the competition. And by NGK Spark Plugs. Original equipment on more makes than any other spark plug in the world. NGK.
Welcome back to This Week in NASCAR. Our guest tonight is Rusty Wallace, who's had a great 1996 season by almost anyone's standards, except probably Rusty Wallace. Here's a look. Talk with any NASCAR Winston Cup Series driver and ask him if he'd be happy with these numbers in a season. 5 wins and a top 10 ranking in the championship standings. Most would love to have enjoyed that kind of year. That's the season Rusty Wallace has had in 1996. He's tasted the winter champagne on 5 different occasions, and with 3 races left is in 7th place in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series championship standings. The victories have come on speedways of all shapes and sizes. In April, Wallace won at the circuit's shortest track, Martinsville. In June, he won at the high-speed oval at Michigan. July brought a trip to the winner's circle at Pocono's giant flat triangle. There was the dominating performance at the lightning-fast short track at Bristol in August, where Rusty led 353 of 500 laps, and there was even a road course win in the group at Sears Point in May. Throw in a long-needed top 10 finish in a restrictor plate race that Wallace scored at Talladega in July. 1996 would have to be a banner year, right? Well, not necessarily so if you're Rusty Wallace. The standard Wallace and the Penske team have established for themselves over the past few years is high, very high, and not being among the few fighting for the championship as the year winds down leaves them short of their goals for this year. Though he's won the second most races this season, what's kept Wallace from the championship hunt are 8 races where, for a variety of reasons, he's finished 30th or worse. And the points lost in those races have been too many to make up, even with 5 wins. Yes, most drivers would love to have Rusty Wallace's 96 results in their column, but Wallace expected more. Not meeting those expectations has only fueled Rusty's burning desire to make sure 1997 ends with a second championship ring in his hands. We're going to talk with Rusty about the highs and lows of 96, what's happened over the past several years to build the Penske team's expectations so high, and take your phone calls too. When the driver of the Miller Ford joins me next on This Week in NASCAR, Rusty Wallace will be here when we continue after this quick timeout. the last 11 seasons, he has scored 46 NASCAR Winston Cup Series wins, including 5 already in 1996. And now joining me on This Week in NASCAR, the driver of Penske Racing South's Miller Ford Thunderbird, and hopefully, in his eyes, the winner of Sunday's AC Delco 400 at Rockingham, Rusty Wallace is here with us. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Alan. Great to be on the show tonight.
Great crowd here with us at the Hall of Fame. I had not been in here this is located just across the street from your team's shops. I had not been in here before. Neat little facility.
It's a great facility. They've done a lot of work here. The volunteers have helped a lot. It's just a neat place. I don't come over much, but I know what's been going on in here. And this is the first time I've seen it in a long time. It looks great, especially from in the truck looking at the television monitors from up high down at it. It was great.
We're going to give you the address and where you find the North Carolina Auto Racing Hall of Fame near the end of our show, so stick around for that. Let's talk about 1996. Has it been a good year or a not so good a year as I characterized?
Well, it's been a good year in number of wins, but it's not been a good year in luck. I mean, the performance of the car, I thought it's been outstanding. The pit crew's been great. The motors are run super. I think we've had good leadership from Don Miller and everybody in our team. I feel like I've been driving pretty decent. But boy, I tell you, when you look at the beginning of the year, we lost an engine in Atlanta leading the race. We crashed with 10 laps to go at Wilkesboro. Had a big lead at Pocono and lost a clutch there. You can go on and on with some of the weird things that have happened. Myself and Robin and Don sat down the other day and we were looking at it. And so we could have easily won 13 races this year. But, you know, if's a big word, I know that. And what you got to do is you just got to perfect all the stuff for next year. There's a lot of good stuff going on across the street under wraps, and I'm real proud to be associated with all the dudes over there right now because we're really working good. I mean, you know, Robin's back with us for an additional 3 years. I think our rhythm is really better than it's ever been. Our next 3 races, we got a great car for tomorrow in Rockingham, the car I won Bristol with. We got a brand new car called PC3. It's a brand new car, never been run. I was telling Robin today, I said, I don't think I've ever seen a car come out of our stable that looks as good as this car does, and it's going to Phoenix. And then we're really ready for Atlanta. I'm really excited about that. Not only are the cars looking good, but the motors have really come a long way. The pit crew's always been consistent. Like I said, the leadership's been good. I'm focused. But there's some weird things that happen. But, you know, I feel so good about 1997. It's unreal. I remember sitting back in 93 at the beginning of the year going, you know, I'm sure I can run good this year. You know, we won 10 races that year. But at the beginning of the year, I made a statement that I haven't made in the last couple of years. And I got thinking about it the other day. I was in an airplane coming back from California. I was thinking to myself about how I'm going to focus on what I'm doing. Sometimes I just need to get away from everybody and just sit and think on my own how we're going to do this. And the word I used back then was I made a commitment to win. That meant a lot. That meant a lot of exercise. It meant a lot of involvement with the race team. It meant a lot of time away from home. It meant a lot of really focusing time. And so in my own heart, I've made that commitment to win for 1997. We got all new cars coming. The pit crew's perfect. The engines are strong. Like I say, the leadership at the shop is good. Our sponsors are there through the year 2000 at least. There's not a reason we can't go out there and do it, and I really feel great about it. Mr. Penske feels good about it. Our car owners feel good about it. Don feels good about it. I do. And I've been on vacation for about a week and a half right now, and I've been out of touch with what's been going on. But I'm really excited about tomorrow to get back in the seat.
Let's talk about a couple of the high points of this year. We reflected on some of the low ones already. Let's talk about some of the high points. You got 7 races into the year, didn't have a win yet. Then you got one in the 8th race at Martinsville. Concern you to be 7 races in and not have a win?
Yeah, a little bit, but then again, I look at how good we were running. I mean, I look at, see, I always look at the performance of the car. I don't look at how you finish. It's how well you're running. I mean, I can go out there and run terrible, and if everybody falls out, I'll finish good. But if I'm running terrible, I got a problem. But Atlanta, we were leading Atlanta, and we were running great at Rockingham, got in an early crash. I solely look at the performance of the car. I mean, look at the pit stops. I look at the way I felt that day. Was I in the game? Was I ready to go? And 7 races in, I wasn't real nervous. I mean, I wanted to get them racked up pretty quick, but then they started coming.
You got wins on all different manner of tracks this year. We just saw Martinsville, the smallest track on the circuit. You had the road course at Sears Point. You had the big track at Michigan, the high bank, if you will. You had the flat track at Pocono and then at Bristol. Does your team's versatility impress you?
I think the team's versatility, yeah, it definitely impresses me. And again, for next year, that's the reason I feel so good. Our first Daytona 500 car is already finished. It's already not finished, but it's been in a wind tunnel. A lot of preparation's been done. And that's all my reasons to think more positive for next year. Yeah. Mike Agee and our entire engine staff is already working super hard on restrictor plate engines. I went through the whole facility today like I say, Don runs the shop, and I haven't been in town for about a week now. I've been out in California servicing and talking to some of our great sponsors and looking at the new Texas Motor Speedway, looking at the new California Motor Speedway, just getting a grip on what I'm about to encounter for next year. But I see a lot of great things, and our restrictor plate stuff is going to get better and better and better because, you know, we had a 10th place finish at Talladega. Really, the car it was a top 5 car easy, but when the rain delay came, we kind of got shuffled back a little bit, but man, I feel good about it. I really honestly feel better about next year than I did about this year and the way I did in '93 when I ran second to Earnhardt and lost by 70 points.
Rusty Wallace is with us, driver of the Miller Ford for Penske Racing South. Your calls on the Kubota race line coming up toward the bottom of the hour, 1-800-266-9531. On the way to a break, take a look at the NASCAR Busch Series championship standings. Just a pair of races left for those drivers to settle their championship, and only 50 points between Randy LaJoie, now the leader, and David Green, who's running in the second spot.
Well, I'm kind of greedy. I wanted it for Neil Bonnet along with Junior Johnson. You know, Junior's furnished me with good cars. Tim Brewer and my whole crew has worked endless hours trying to get in victory lane. And once I got in the lead on that last restart, I had a sniff of that win, and it was going to take an awful good race car to take that thing away from us. Once you get out front like that, you don't have any reason giving that lead up.
Memories of races past at Rockingham, where the NASCAR Winston Cup Series runs this weekend, as we rejoin you from the North Carolina Auto Racing Hall of Fame. Rusty Wallace with us tonight on This Week in NASCAR. Your phone calls coming up a bit later on in the show. We've talked a lot about your attitude through '96. Knowing you as I do to a certain extent, and the way that you carry about your business of racing. When things haven't gone right, I can picture you being at the door of the shop at 8 o'clock Monday morning and being all over the place wanting to know what we can do to keep this from happening again, or whatever it was. Is that a valid picture that I imagine?
I don't know if it's that much. I mean, I used to do that, and I've backed off a little bit and try to let the guys that are doing their job do their job a little more. I mean, they hurt just as much as I hurt when we have a problem. I mean, if you have a problem and you're running good, that's one thing. But if you keep continuing to have the problem, you know, then we need to work on it and figure out what the problem is. I haven't had to do that a whole lot lately because we've been running good. We really have been running good. Now, we got beat at Charlotte, and I didn't like it, but we went back and we got reasons for it. We talked about the horsepower. We talked about some of the other things we've done. And so we got a good idea of what's going on. If I get blowed off and don't run good, I mean, I'm not going to sit at home and not go to the shop. Don and Robin run the daily operations at the shop and do a hell of a great job. But I used to get in there pretty hard and pretty deep and get pretty vocal, and I'm learning as I go to throttle back just a cut about 20%, you know.
Yeah. I want to ask you if there was a point during the season at which you said to yourself, okay, because you've talked so much about focusing on '97, was there a point in the season at which you said, okay, the '96 title is out of reach, now I need to think farther ahead than that?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I never quit. I don't never give up. But then it gets to be a point where, you know, mathematically it's getting tough and things like that. You know, I want to get in the top 5 before the year's over. Mathematically, that's going to be tough. I'm only 4 points out of 6. Something about the top 5 sounds better than the top 10 to me. You know, it's just the way I feel. But so I'm going to give it all I got. But really, point standings are one thing. I mean, for some reason we focus a lot on that, but to me, I'd rather win a bunch of races than finish I feel better winning 6 or 7 races than I do finishing 6th or 7th in the points. Yeah. So that's my focus right now, to win all the races I can and end the year with a hell of a good run.
Was there ever any point at which you said this year, okay, we're going to start on some development now, we're going to just try some new stuff? Does that ever creep into your program?
Well, I think we all think that. It's never I. I've told a lot of people, and Don knows as well as I do, that there's no I in our race team. It's all of us. It's just not me, and it's not Don, it's not Robin, it's not Mike, and it's not everybody. But yeah, there's a lot of development we want to do in our shock absorber program. There's a lot of development we want to do in aerodynamics. There's only so much wind tunnel time we can get at Marietta for the Ford Thunderbird. And as everybody knows, the wind tunnel thing has just been a chase all year long. These spoilers have been up and down, up and down, up and down. And there's a lot of controversy surrounding that, and I learned when you start commenting on the controversy, you can get in trouble. So it's better just to go back and fix the problem and not talk about it.
So there was not a point, I guess, to come back around where you said, okay, we're out of the championship, we're going to try some stuff. You didn't change your approach at all during the year. You've just stuck with your same old thing.
I told our engine department last week, and I told them again this morning. I was back there, and they're working on some new developments and engine stuff, and I said, look, if you're going to blow anything up, get blowing it up right now, because I don't want to blow nothing up. I don't want to blow nothing up next year. I don't want to be at a horsepower deficit the first race of next year. I want to be right there.
Yeah.
So if you got any trick stuff you want to try, and we have a lot of things we want to try, I said, let's lean on it. If it blows, it blows. I said, I'd rather have it blow up 90 miles down the road than I would 2,000 miles away from home next week, though.
Yeah. You're taking it Rockingham. Phoenix, man, better run the distance. Rusty Wallace is with us, driver of the Miller Ford for Penske Racing South. Going to take a break, come back after we take a look at the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series Championship standings. Mike Skinner chopped 10 points off Ron Hornaday's lead at their race in Bakersfield last weekend. Trucks run a week from Saturday in Phoenix.
Myself and Jimmy Maycar and Harold and all of us, we work double hard and trying to win all the races and do the best job we can.
Bill's really making it tough on you, though. He's just out there riding around.
As long as he just rides and keeps riding, he might beat us, but at least when it's all over, I think they'll know who drove the hardest.
Rusty Wallace chasing Bill Elliott for the championship in 1988, standing in victory lane at Rockingham where the circuit runs this weekend. We come back now with the driver of now the Miller Ford, and a little bit different looking race car then. Let's jump off there and take a little history tour with Rusty Wallace. Remember your first Winston Cup win?
Yeah, I sure do. My first Winston Cup win is in 1986, the Valleydale 500 in Bristol, and I believe it was in the April race.
And there it is.
Qualified 24th, took the lead real quick, and led a whole bunch of races in that old notchback Pontiac, and which was the Grand Prix 2+2, was the different style car. It really ran great.
And Rusty in victory lane is celebrating win number 1 of what is now 46. Let's go to 1988. You took 6 wins. You lost the title to Bill Elliott by 24 points. Then you had another 6 wins in 89 and won the championship, barely. What'd you learn in 88 that helped you get that title in 89?
Well, I drove as hard as I could in 88 and got real aggressive there the last 3 or 4 races on the racetrack and verbally. And, I tried to do everything I could to shake him, you know, and he held tight. He did a hell of a job. He was real smart. I mean, I'm trying to pressure him to overdrive the car. I'm trying to wear him out on the racetrack and in the media and everything, you know, and he wouldn't shake, and he stayed consistent. He didn't tear anything up, and he finished. And in 88, the last race in Atlanta, we led the most laps, set on the pole, and won the race, and was all over. He won. And at the end of that year, I thought, what can I do different for 1989? I never put a focus on trying to lead as many laps as I could on bonus points. I say the big deal is to win the race. So in 1989, every time I could lead, I led, and if I could lead the most laps, I'd lead the most laps. And when it was all said and done, I gathered up, I believe it was 127 bonus points that year, and I only won the championship at 12 points. So paying attention to leading the most laps was important.
Now look at Rusty at Richmond back in 1988. I don't believe that was one of those particularly good days down the stretch there. Yeah, it was too. You were taking the checkered flag there. Now that I remember, that was in '89 the overheated race where about everybody in the field. Must have been one of the hottest days on record we ever ran a race.
It was the hottest race I can ever remember running. In fact, a good friend of mine, Buddy Barnes, he was our spotter then, and I told him, I said, Buddy, I'm almost consciously out of control in this car, but I had a big lead. Earnhardt was running second, and he was about to die, and I was about to die, but I kept telling him, I said, don't let me get too high in this track. There's a lot of marbles up there, and I'm literally just holding on, holding my head up with one hand and driving with the other hand with 15 laps to go, and Buddy kept saying, keep it low, you're getting too high. And he talked me through the last 15 laps. We won the race. I pulled down pit road, forgot where victory lane was, drove in the middle of pit road and shut the car out and slid out of the car. and we had victory lane in the middle of pit road.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Now I remember that was the heat race. Let's talk about the last race of '89, your championship winning race. Yep. You had a tough day. Was there ever a point in that day where you said, oh, it's gone, forget it?
Yeah, I really was concerned. I was telling the story the other day out in California. I was out at some of my good friends, Oakley Sunglasses, and we were reminiscing about the 1989 season. And I told them, I said, you know, that year, I remember we went into the race, we qualified great. I think it was Earnhardt and I in the front row going to the championship hunt there, and started the race and had a flat tire, won a lap down. Yeah. We ran about 20 more laps and the lug nuts come loose, and I won another lap down. Went out to ran, the lug nuts came loose again. I went 3 laps down. But the car's running great the whole time, but I lost 3 laps because of tires and lug nuts. And so Barry's saying, I got to finish 15th or better. And I said, where am I at? He said, you're 21st. And I'm going, man, I don't believe it. I said, where's Earnhardt? He said, he's got a half a lap lead in the field, and he is hauling. I said, oh, well, that sounds great. I mean, that's all I need right now. Yeah. He's having the best race of his life, you know. And so all of a sudden, a couple of them fell out. I got 1 lap back, and all of a sudden, I said, where am I at now? I said, you're 18th. It was like 100 laps to go. And I called up later. I said, where am I at now? He said, man, you're 16th. said, boy, I saw Dale Jarrett or somebody go and smoke, and he said, where are you now? 15th. He said, man, don't screw up no more. Hold on. I said, okay. So I'm cruising along. Then one more fell out. I think I finished 14th. We won the championship by 10 points because I finished, and Earnhardt led the most laps. He got to 5 bonus points, and I barely got it.
And look at Victory Lane on that day in 1989 at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Rusty Wallace, the NASCAR Winston Cup champion that afternoon. The other standout moment, just kind of rifling through the history book of Rusty Wallace, was with this Penske team, the switch from Pontiac to Ford in 1989. A lot of folks from the outside looking at it saying, hey, you won 10 races and you're going to switch brands? Are you nuts? What was that period of time like making that decision?
It wasn't a real hard decision if everybody knew what was going on inside the corporation and inside General Motors and all that. And I think that I think it showed a lot of respect for our team, dignity, whatever you call it, to make that move, because we were getting shot at from everybody. Man, you got to be crazy to switch from Pontiac after 10 wins to go to Ford. But that's when Pontiac had its own performance department, and it went from just being Pontiac to being Pontiac and Chevrolet and Buick and Oldsmobile. And that special attention we paid to Pontiac Motors division went away when that happened. That was the end of our 3-year contract with Pontiac also. When we went back to negotiate, things weren't working. It just didn't happen. It became financially impossible to do it, and it became, everything was not right. And Ford really, really, really wanted us to be with their team. They put a lot of effort in it, and it was the right decision. And they all said, you're going to fall on your face. And I said, okay. And I think that made us focus more. And we won 8 races. We won the most races that year. And the car just flew all year long. And so it was a good decision. It's still the right decision. Although I've got, heck, I own a Pontiac dealership in Morristown, Tennessee. It's a great car. They're good friends of mine. We have a wonderful relationship with them still. But I got a great relationship with Ford, too. I mean, race cars are race cars, and I enjoy driving all of them.
Rusty Wallace is with us, driver of Penske Racing South's Miller Ford Thunderbird. Take a look at this car. This is the beginnings of the relationship between Rusty Wallace and Roger Penske, that machine here in the North Carolina Auto Racing Hall of Fame. We'll get the story on it when we continue on This Week in NASCAR in just a minute.
This is the first win since June. We've been so close since then so many times, but we just haven't been able to get that win. And we finished second at Richmond, we finished second at Michigan, we finished second at Charlotte, and now finally it pays off. We're back in victory lane again.
Davey Allison winning at Rockingham in 1991 as we come back on This Week in NASCAR, getting the stage set for the opening of practice and qualifying at the Rock tomorrow morning with Rusty Wallace, driver of the Miller Ford for Penske Racing South. Okay, so we saw that Penske racing machine with Rusty Wallace's name across the door on the way to the break. Tell me the story about that car.
Well, that was the, what kind of car was that? That was Chevrolet Caprice, a 1980 Chevrolet Caprice. And a long time ago when I was short track racing, Don Miller and I were good friends, and he talked Roger and let me drive that car for my first Winston Cup race, and we debuted it in 1980 with Tex Powell as the crew chief, and Don and Tex Powell and a good friend of mine by the name of Don Kern put the motor in it. We took it there, and I practiced, and the car ran good, and I was able to run some IROC cars and get some more track experience, and we got in a race, and we qualified 7th and finished 2nd. So it was just a Cinderella deal, and I thought, hey, this stuff's easy. But I found out real quick when I went to the second Winston Cup race, it was hard as heck.
Yeah. Let's talk about Mr. Penske for a minute. He's something of a mystery man. People know the name, certainly. They know he's very successful at what he does. But I don't think I don't think popularly there's a real good perception of who is he and what's he like.
Well, that's a pretty good, I'd say that. I mean, Roger is, we talk to him. If I don't talk to him every other day, Don talks to him every other day. I talked to him just an hour ago, 2 hours ago. He's super interested in our race team. He goes to all the races he possibly can. His vice president of the company, Walt Zarnick, he goes to almost all the races. But Roger's really, really loving stock car racing. You know, he's building the new California Motor Speedway out in California now, which he's real excited about. But I can guarantee you, you might not see him a lot. You'll see him 10 times a year probably. And the rest of the time, the Indy cars are running on Sundays. He's the crew chief for Al Unser Jr., so he's there in the pit area all the time. I don't know if he's a crew chief or not, but he's making a lot of calls and talking on the radio a whole lot and strategizing. But he loves this Winston Cup racing, loves this team. and we love him. He's just a hell of a great guy. The thing that's so good about Roger is that he's been racing for so long that he understands the highs and the lows. And but he's the type of guy, if we have a problem and we're running good, he understands it. Then his next call is, well, what can we do to prevent it next time? Things like that. He likes a real clean, organized environment, and I do too. Don does too. We all do. So we work really good together. We've been able to keep our sponsors happy by good, nice, neat appearances all the time and good performance on the track. But he's a perfectionist. He's a wonderful car owner. He's a great mentor, I guess that's what you say it.
There you go.
But yeah, did I do that right?
Yeah, there you go.
So I can't say anything except good things about Roger. I really can't, because I mean, he'll sit right there when everything's breaking bad. He'll sit right there with you, and he'll tell you, hey boys, this is war, heck with the rest of them, let's get out there and get them, you know.
There you go. Rusty Wallace is with us, who drives for Penske Racing South there, Miller Ford's going to come back and take your calls and questions in a minute. First, the season's winding down. Championships being decided in NASCAR races around the United States, including this weekend. See the Winston Cup and the Busch Series races there at Rockingham Saturday and Sunday. That Featherlight Modified Tour race at Thompson, Connecticut. Title is on the line, and that one Sunday afternoon. Second to last race of the year for the Slim Jim All-Pro cars. They are in Gainesville, Georgia. On Sunday afternoon, Mike Cope took over the point lead in that division after their race at Nashville last Sunday. 1-800-266-9531. The Kubota race line open for you next when we come back on This Week in NASCAR. First, a reminder that Sunday's AC Delco 400 can be seen live on TNN Motorsports. 12:30 Eastern Time is the beginning of the broadcast. This week's Royal Oak Fan of the Week is Cheryl Lawyer from Latham, New York. On behalf of This Week in NASCAR and Royal Oak Charcoal, here's wishing her good times all summer long.
I didn't know. You know, I thought before the caution come out that Rusty was conserving his tires, and then I started doing it. And I don't know what would have happened, but, you know, I just feel very fortunate to be a part of this Pontiac team sponsored by MB&A with Bill Davis. I'm just a lucky young man to be sitting in the seat.
Ward Burton getting a big win 1 year ago in the AC Delco 400. That's up Sunday afternoon at Rockingham, and we come back now on This Week in NASCAR to the North Carolina Auto Racing Hall of Fame in Mooresville with Rusty Wallace. And it's your turn. The Kubota race line at 1-800-266-9531. Pontiac, Illinois. Justin, I believe was the name. You have the first word. Go ahead.
Hi, Rusty. I was just wondering if you guys was going to maybe a two-car team next year.
Well, it's a good question. It's been asked a whole lot, and no, we're not. If we do go to a two-car team, it won't be the 1998 season. We're working real hard to establish what we've got right now. We're really focused for 1997, and Don and I and Roger all feel that if we try to split our operation up now and try to do two-car at this point, it could hurt us. But we're going to look at the competition in 97 and see what the rule changes, how they occur. There might be a big a testing procedure change for next year that nobody knows about that I think might happen. And if that does, it might not be the best thing to have a two-car team.
Let's go out to the Big Island, Honolulu, Hawaii. Dottie, you're on This Week in NASCAR with Rusty Wallace. Go ahead.
Hello, Rusty. Aloha.
Oh, gee. Go ahead.
Okay, Rusty. This is Dottie Smythe from Honolulu.
And your question, please.
Fan. And through the Scene magazine that I receive a few days after each race, your airplanes are going to be increased, and I wondered if you have gotten your jet pilot yet.
That's a good question.
Yet.
I mean, everybody knows I'm pretty excited about aviation.
Buff, yeah.
And I think what she's alluding to is that now, since we got so many West Coast races coming up, we got Phoenix, we got Sears Point, we got Texas, we got California, and what's happened is that the sponsors are going to be using the drivers and the people a lot more, so we'll be probably making 8, 10, 12, maybe even 15 trips out to California. And so planes that fly a little higher and fly a little faster are going to be something we're probably going to need. And no, I don't have my jet license yet, but that's something I might do.
Watching Rusty the pilot at work there in the left seat of one of his airplanes. Let's go to Warner Robins, Georgia. Dawn, you're next with Rusty Wallace. Hello.
Hi, Rusty.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Great.
I just wanted to get your thoughts on the new track at Texas and what you think's going to come about for the race in April.
Great question. I think that I was there last weekend. Like I said, I took a trip to California, and as I left Concord, North Carolina, I stopped off in Texas. Then I went into California, and I had a chance to drive around Texas in a pace car. I run about 140 miles an hour in a pace car, I guess.
Wow.
And I told them, I told them, I said, you know, the track is in great shape. It's going to be a super track to run on. It feels, when I drive it, it feels like it's a little flatter getting into corners and a little shorter than Charlotte. And I noticed that Mark Martin tested down there, I guess, around about 176, about almost 10 miles an hour, 8 miles an hour slower than what we run at Charlotte. By the time we get down there and everything gets right, it's going to be probably within 4 or 5 miles an hour of Charlotte. But the facility was beautiful. I mean, the grandstands, the access in and out of the racetrack, it's just a great facility. It's state-of-the-art. It's wonderful. It's a track that they needed in Texas. And it's like, and we can go on and talk about the new California track, too. It's the same way. I mean, it was just beautiful. Yeah. 6 lanes of traffic coming into place, no parking charges, no way in the world you're ever going to get in a traffic jam. The facility is huge. It's real user-friendly. Mr. Penske and all those people did everything they possibly could to ease the pain on the fan. They want the fan to get in and get out, and yet put safe, fast racing on. So that's what's happened. The banking at Texas has been reduced from 24 down to 22 degrees. Charlotte's 24, Texas is 22. The banking at Charlotte, not Charlotte, but California has been reduced from 18 degrees like at Michigan down to 14 degrees. All in an effort to slow down the speeds, put more racing back in, more side-by-side racing. So I applaud both of the new racetracks, because I think they're going to be the leaders of the pack.
We thank you all for your calls and questions. For our guest, Rusty Wallace, going to take a quick time out, come back and get Rusty's thoughts on this weekend's Rockingham race in a minute.
The season dwindles down to a mere 3 races left in deciding the NASCAR Winston Cup Championship. Jeff Gordon enters Sunday's AC Delco 400 with a scant 1-point advantage over his stablemate Terry Labonte. When the DuPont Chevy's power plant failed Gordon at Charlotte, it evaporated 6 straight weeks of flawless runs that saw Jeff turn a 134-point deficit into a 111-point lead. The 110 points Jeff lost at Charlotte will need to be made up this weekend at the Rock, where earlier this season a 40th place finish mired him deep in the points race. Terry Labonte's victory at the UAW GM 500 has put him into a position to recapture what has eluded him for 12 seasons, the Winston Cup Championship. But in order for him to do that, he'll need a reversal of fortune where debris won't turn an outstanding run into a 34th place finish like it did earlier this season. As Jeff and Terry's battle rages on, they can ill afford to forget about Dale Jarrett, who is only 92 points out of the championship lead. DJ will return to the North Carolina Motor Speedway, where a repeat performance of his 2nd place finish in February could help deliver him his first NASCAR Winston Cup crown. Dale Earnhardt's 8th championship in '96 seems less attainable with only 3 races remaining and facing a 271-point deficit. But if Earnhardt was ever in a position to cut into that lead, it's this weekend, as he returns to the site of his first of 2 wins in 1996. The battle for the '96 NASCAR Winston Cup Championship is as tight as it has ever been this late into the season. We'll all just have to wait and see which driver will be defending his points lead next week when the Tour packs up and heads west to do battle at Phoenix International Raceway.
And there you look at an overhead shot of the North Carolina Motor Speedway, where practice begins tomorrow morning, and the AC Delco 400 gets the green flag on Sunday afternoon, though it will physically appear much different than that. A lot of work has gone on over the past 5 months or so out at Rockingham. A lot of new grandstands and restrooms and a new control tower and all kinds of different things. Place won't look the same when we roll in the morning. So, Rockingham, give me 3 or 4 things that cross your mind when you think about going to run 400 miles at Rockingham. What are you thinking about?
Well, handling's everything down there. I've won, I think it was 3 in a row at one point there, and at Rockingham has been a great track for me. The track, I heard, is wore a little bit. The track that's a little slicker in tires right now. It's a little harder to get a hold of the track surface. But it's going to be a typical Rockingham race. I mean, qualifying's one thing, and trust me, it's just going to be one thing. That'll be one show. The race is going to be a totally other show. One thing about Rockingham, you want to qualify good there, because I guess they got the front and rear pits. Do they still have that?
Yep.
Okay, I heard they were going to put it in the front stereo. I didn't know, but anyway. So you got to qualify good to keep on the front.
Yeah.
That's going to be important. But shock absorber is going to be very, very important, getting that figured out just right. but tire pressures, fast pit stops, track position. Rockingam's a place where track position is real important. So what am I telling you? You got to have everything, right?
You got to have
it's no different.
day.
It's no different than any other racetrack. You just got to have it right. But,
you have had a great deal of success at Rockingham. You've won 3 of the last 7 races there. But as we look at one of the races you have won there, all of those were from worse than 10th starting spot. So do I judge from that you don't necessarily need to qualify that well to have a chance to win?
Now, you know as well as I do that with me, qualifying's not everything in the world. I mean, I've won from last, I've won from first, I won from middle of the pack. I mean, nowadays you want to get up in the front early because track position's tough and everybody's getting more equal.
Yeah.
So I'm going down there tomorrow morning to do my best job. I mean, the car looks great, the horsepower looks great. I'm focused, I'm ready. I've got cabin fever. I've been locked up, you know, out in California doing some stuff out there. But I'm ready to get down there to qualify the best I could and put a good show on.
Championship contenders, you got 3 or 4 guys, particularly 2 that are a point apart for the championship. Do you treat them any differently on Sunday than you would any other week so far this season?
Not really. They wouldn't treat me any different. I know that. They really wouldn't. I mean, I'm going to go down there and try to win all the races I can. My deal I need to do is try to win the last 3 races. Like I said earlier, I wish I could win 8 races like I did in '94. I can't win the 10, but I'm going to try hard. I got the best equipment I can possibly think to take to the next 3 races, and I shouldn't have any excuses. I just hope there's no wrecks or no DNFs or some weird things that happen. To me, the only thing we have to do is to get that car handling really, really good, because I'm confident with the horsepower, confident with the car, I'm going to be confident with the pit stops, and I just got to make sure we got the right 4 springs and shocks in that thing.
Got the Pit Crew Championship on Saturday, the Unocal Rockingham Pit Crew Championship. Has your crew spent time this week prepping for it?
You know what? I don't know if they have or not. I get excited about that, but in a way I don't sometimes, because they get excited about it, but I feel bad for them when something goes wrong. Mm-hmm. And I tell them before they get in that deal, I say, look, this deal right here, I hope you guys win the thing, but if you don't, I don't need you running around moping and slamming tools around and jumping up and down and saying this guy did it wrong or that guy did it wrong. I mean, just one of them going to win. Everybody in the world enters that thing. If you base it on how everything goes each week, they're not the fastest. If they're the fastest, if not one of the fastest, easily in the top 3 or 4 all the time. So they should perform really good in it, and I hope they do.
And there's the crew doing their thing on a recent Sunday afternoon. A little different paint scheme on that car that we saw rolled out back at Richmond in September. And so that Pit Crew Championship is up on Saturday afternoon, and then the race on Sunday. A final question that you kind of answered for me earlier in the show. I was thinking that I wanted to ask you, you're so tight from 6th all the way back to 16th in the championship standings. Does it matter? And you sort of answered that. You said yeah and no all at the same time. Does it matter?
To me, if you can't win the championship, it means so much and it pays so much for the #1 spot that when you get to 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, it just falls off dramatically. And as it falls off, your concentration towards the really good points position falls off. But I've always been a guy that's been motivated by wins. The points don't do a whole lot for me. It gets a lot of media attention. A lot of people pay that. But I don't look at all. I look at the performance of the car. I look how many wins you had. That's what I look at. Have we led a bunch of laps? Yeah, we're 2nd laps led this year. Have you won a bunch of races? Yeah, we've got 5 wins. We're 2nd wins. How's the car run? Well, I think it's run good. Has the pit crew performed? Yeah. I can say yeah to a lot of things. And I can say, man, we've had some bad luck at other places. I mean, we were sitting there with 10 laps to go, got half a lap or a 10-car length lead at Wilkesboro, and all of a sudden here comes a projectile out of the wall and you hit it head on. Yeah. I didn't plan on that one, but like I said, if's a big word. And, but I'm happy with the team. I'm happy with the performance. We need a little more luck.
All right, Rusty, thanks for being here.
Thanks
Appreciate it. Enjoyed it. Rusty Wallace, our guest, driver of the Millard Ford. Back to wrap up this week in NASCAR in just a minute. Don't go away.
Race fans, it's time to vote for the 1996 NMPA NASCAR Winston Cup Most Popular Driver. And here's how to cast votes for your favorite drivers. In the U.S., dial 1-900-737-6262. Total cost is 79 cents. And in Canada, dial 1-900-677-7676. Cost is 89 cents, and you must use a touch-tone phone. The voting lines are open through November 18th, and the winner will be announced at the Winston Cup Awards banquet in December. So vote for your favorite drivers today.
We come back now to the North Carolina Auto Racing Hall of Fame to wrap up this week in NASCAR. The Hall of Fame located just off exit 36 of Interstate 77. It is open 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday from 9 to 5. And it is a wonderful place to come on by. If you're in the area, you tour the Hall of Fame. All of the proceeds from the Hall of Fame go to support abused children charities here in this area. It's a great place to stop by. We appreciate them having our program here tonight. Next week, This Week in NASCAR goes west, young man. At the Holiday Inn West, Phoenix, Arizona, Bill Elliott will be our guest, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Check us out on the tube or in person if you can be there. In Phoenix, 2 weeks, we'll be down in Miami for the Busch Series season finale at the Radisson Mart Plaza. Thank Rusty Wallace for being our guest tonight on This Week in NASCAR. Thank all the folks that came out to join us in our live audience. And thank you for watching. For our entire This Week in NASCAR crew, I'm Alan Bestwick. See you next time.
This Week in NASCAR has been brought to you by Napa Auto Parts. At Napa, we keep America running. Chevrolet. One car company has won more races in the history of NASCAR. Genuine Chevrolet. Royal Oak Charcoal. Good times in every Big Red Bag. And by NGK Spark Plugs. Original equipment on more makes than any other spark plug in the world. NGK.